Hello out there, it's me, Breanna. Today I am joined, as always, by my co-host and friend Ethan. You are listening to book 3 of Brianna's book Bananza. You can find it exclusively on youtube.com/SaveTheGameMedia. If you want to show Save the Game Media a little extra love and get early access to all of our content, you can find us at patreon.com/SaveTheGameMedia. For today, we will be starting out with a spoiler free and then diving into spoilers, but discussion of Year of the Reaper. And I'm not going to pronounce this right, and I feel so bad, but Makiia Lucier. But before we get into that, how are you today, Ethan?
We're doing good. We got a lot of recording done today. Our
Mm-hmm.
2 hour prediction show for the Game Awards, so that was fun rolling right into
Mm-hmm.
this. It's a good day. I finished my last final today. I will never
Mm.
step foot on another college campus for the rest of my life.
It feels so good, right?
Yeah, it felt good driving off that campus, and I'm like, I'm never stepping foot on these again. But I am still going to go to school. It's just going to be online from now on. But I got
Yeah.
to go to work.
I get it. For
Yeah.
sure. For sure. For sure. Um, I just recently got a
Mm.
tattoo. Recently
Yep.
is in yesterday morning. So I texted the group chat. I was like, "Yo, my water broke," because my Sanoderm had like the liquid had finally gotten too close to the edge.
Yep.
I guess I hit it just right, and it popped, and then I had to clean it. I was like, "Ethan, I gotta take care of this."
Got to
So
delay
that's
it.
what I did.
Yep.
That's
Gave
what
me
I did
time
right
to
before
eat
this.
eat the leftover fried fish I had, so it was good
Mm,
good timing.
perfect, perfect. Yeah, it was less liquid than I thought, but it's a lot darker than I thought it
It looked
was. So
like a
I have to
lot.
clean that. It's not that much. I
But yeah,
thought it
that
was a lot more, to be honest with you. I
that
thought I
looks
would
like
find
it'll
liquid
stain.
everywhere. Yeah, probably will, but we'll see. I'm pretty good at getting stains out. I'm not going to name any names, but somebody wipes their butt on the carpet.
Oh,
Um,
I think I
yeah,
know the
so
culprit.
yeah.
It's your dad.
Um, I tell him that every time. Every time I find it, I'm like, "Dad, why would you do this?" But no. Okay, so I kind of want to like do a couple fun things here really quick. So
Okay,
first of all, this is my copy of Year of the Reaper. I got this
that's cool.
exclusively from Fairy Loot from my loot box. I cannot recommend them enough. Obviously not sponsored. I don't even think we've ever had a single sponsor, but
No,
I love
one day.
Fairy Loot in the depths of my soul. They make the most beautiful books. I love them. So this is my copy of the book. You can see it's got black pages, and these are all my tabs.
Those are cool. Oh, you put tabs in your books like that.
Yeah.
You're
Not always, but the
crazy.
tabs look so good.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
What could you
And then
possibly be bookmarking like that?
everything. There's
Yep.
the back for you guys, and then I'm going to take it out cuz I just love this stuff so much.
Because I don't
Um,
like my dust jackets. You gotta show me
but
the
look at
book
this
without
dust
dust
jacket.
jacket. That's pretty cool. Well, that's nice to actually get a visual. That's interesting.
Uh-huh.
Because like when you're reading it, like me on Kindle, and you don't have this artwork, you have a complete image in your mind of what these characters look like,
Yep.
and that's not anything like
Yep.
how I
We also got
envisioned it.
this like gold.
Oh,
There's the spine,
that's a cool spine.
and
I
there's
like
nothing
it.
really on the back, but I do also have a signature from the
Very
author.
nice.
Yeah, super cool. Freaking love this. And I also, because it was obviously the book of the month, I believe this is from December of 2021, which was the first month that I got my fairy
Mm,
loot.
nice.
So that because it's also from Fairy Loot, I have these two other things. This is a little art card with Cass. And on the
Cool.
back, it's a letter from the author.
Hmm.
And I thought that might be fun to read.
Yeah.
So I'm
Let's
gonna
hear
read
it.
that. And it's handwritten, by the way. So give me a second.
Oh,
um, Dear Fairy Loot reader, I am delighted to know my book has found its way into your hands and into your home. Year of the Reaper takes place in the mountains where the winds are brisk and the rains are constant. I love how a setting can be just as much a part of the story as the characters, and I like to think of you curled up in a cozy chair with a warm drink, reading all about Cassia, Lena, Ventilus, and Jehan. Jehan? I don't know how to say it. Sorry. These characters.
Jahan.
These characters hold a special place in my heart. I hope they find a way into yours. Love, Makia. So
That's
there's a
nice.
little note that she wrote. And then my favorite thing, one of my favorite things that comes, so you get this little card thing from the author.
Hmm.
It's an interview with the author, and they're just really short questions. Um, so we're gonna read that later because I kind of wanted to go into it a little
Okay.
spoilery into the interview. So we'll pick
Yep.
that up later. Don't let me forget. But yeah, this is kind of like some of the stuff you get with Fairy Loot. I've got stuff all around me from Fairy
Hashtag
Loot.
not sponsored.
So fantastic. Fantastic service. Anyway, so yeah, I thought that would be fun since I have all of the extra stuff for this book.
Exactly. Yeah.
Um, but let's get into spoiler-free stuff.
Hmm.
Just general, what'd you think?
Um, I loved it. Uh, I I think out of the three books we've read, this is the book that sort of created such a vivid image in my mind of what
Mhm,
the environment was like, what the world was like, what the characters were like, their attitudes, their facial expressions, up and down the line. I had a really vivid image of what was going on while I was reading this book, and I really enjoyed that. I think it's possibly too because I did recently just play A Plague Tale Requiem, which came out I think last month, and this very much to me was, I mean, if you told me this was a book about the world of A Plague Tale Requiem, I would say, okay, it's like 14th century France. There's a plague going on. You know, it's pretty much the same sort of setting. So I think I drew a lot of inspiration from that. But I think the descriptors were great. The characters were fun. I particularly enjoyed Cass. He was my favorite. He,
mhm.
he is the main character, but I think he was the most interesting out of everybody. I think his interactions with a lot of different characters are great. I love a lot of the moments that he has. Well, is that a spoiler? No, that's not really a spoiler. I love all the moments he has sort of recovering from the trauma that he's experienced in the past, and you can see him
Mhm.
growing as a person, even though he is an adult already. He was taken at a young
He's a
age at
very
one
young
point.
adult.
He's a very
He's like
young
18
adult,
or 19.
but he's been through more life than probably everyone he's interacting with.
Mhm.
And you can see that conflict a lot in this book, and that's something really interesting. And the way he proves himself to people, that he is an adult, especially his brother
Let's say Ventilis. I'm sure we're
Ventilus.
pronouncing it wrong, but you know
Yeah.
what, guys? We gotta go with something.
Yep. We got to keep chugging. But especially proving to his brother Ventilus that he is his own man, and that he can care for himself. So yeah, overall, love the story. Really great book. Not a long read, not a hard read, but it was very well thought out. Good descriptors, really great dialogue. Um, yeah, I'm all for it.
Okay, awesome. I would actually agree with the sentiment that it's not a hard read. And I don't mean that in like a, oh, this is like such a simple book kind of
Yeah, like
thing.
this is a
Like this
baby
is a
book.
very
No,
good book,
yeah,
but it was almost like a breath of fresh air where everything was just simple. Like the story, you just kind of follow along. It's very much like I don't know, you're just like
you're
kind of
just
like
a
chugging
camera over the
along.
shoulder.
Mhm.
You know.
You're just hanging out. So it's nothing like complex to read. It's a light, fluffy read as in terms of, like, actual, like, what you're reading. In terms of content, it's pretty dark. I mean, as you can imagine, it's called Year of the Reaper,
A lot of
so
death.
a lot of death. Even on the front, it says, "The past never forgets."
Hmm.
So yeah, I overall really enjoyed this book. Between the 3 books that we've read so far, I think this is my favorite that we've read so far. I wouldn't say that it's necessarily like the best book in terms of like skills in writing. I would say that would probably go to Yokohama Station SF. I think that the
Oh,
writing on that was insane. Um, but in terms of like my favorite book, I think this is definitely it. I had a great time. So yeah, if
awesome.
you're thinking about picking this book up, I highly recommend it.
Absolutely, yeah.
Um, I think my rating on this is probably going to be an 8 out of 10.
Ooh, sign a rating. Let me think. Out of 10. Ooh,
It's hard.
because I really enjoyed it. For me personally, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. I mean, this is exactly what I want in a fiction book, I think.
Mhm.
I read mostly nonfiction. Pretty much the only fiction I read is for this podcast. So it's
Yeah.
sort of forcing me to read fiction, and I really enjoy fiction, but I just never really put aside time to do it. So this is exactly what I want. It blends sort of a historical narrative. It's a timepiece, but it's still straddling the edge of like fantasy and all that,
You
but
have
it's
like a
still
tiny bit of
grounded.
magic, a tiny bit
Yep.
of
Supernatural
otherworldly.
stuff going on. Yeah.
Mhm.
But I love this sort of writing in a fiction book. So yeah, 9 out of
The one
10 for me. This is what I
the
want.
one thing that I kind of want to point out on this is that it is kind of weird reading this book coming out of a plague. Like we're not out, you know what I
I feel
mean?
like
But it gives
more,
it a little depth to it because
yeah,
it's more realistic.
I feel like I've consumed more like pandemic or plague media like during the pandemic than I have at any other time in my life. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it's something comforting like when you read that sort of thing, but we're coming
Mhm.
out of it now, luckily. But this book did
Yeah.
release in December 2021.
Yeah, somewhere in there, December 2021 or maybe November. It's very close to there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know.
Weird.
Highly recommend it. Before we jump into the spoiler because I kind of want to get into the nitty gritty of this. Before we jump in, I do want to announce our next book is going to be in a holidays, and that's
Mm.
HOLIDAZE, or Z, I guess, if you're Canadian.
Zed.
Um,
Yes.
by Christina Lauren. I have kind of read a tiny bit. This is how I normally tab is the rainbow tabs.
Yeah.
I kind of read a tiny bit already, but basically what it's like the way it was pitched to me when I first heard about it, I think it was on TikTok, Book Talk, is that it's basically like a Groundhog Day, but Hallmark movie.
Uh-oh.
So it's definitely a romance. I
Okay.
but it's going to be basically she's trying to figure out how to avoid her whole family dying.
Oh,
So
interesting. I'm here for it.
yeah, it's supposed to be pretty good. So also this cover has like the weird, I don't know how to pronounce like or how to like it's got like a very
Texture?
smooth cover. Yeah, it's
Oh,
very
smooth.
smooth. It's very I don't know, it's not many books feel like this. It's very
Yeah,
smooth.
I like it.
So I enjoy that.
My
But yeah,
book will
that's
be
what
on my
we'll be
phone
doing.
like it always is.
Yeah, you could like be like my phone is very smooth.
But January, I think I'll get my first physical book because I'll be finally living
You'll
in
be
a new place.
moved.
Yeah.
Yes. I do wanna point out just for terms of, like, fairness sake, I did choose this book. This is my 2nd book in a row choosing, so Ethan will be choosing the next 2 books for January and February. It was
Mm.
so kind of Ethan to let me choose this. I
Yeah.
just thought this was probably the only time you can really fit this book in is month of Christmas.
Holiday book.
Um, yeah, so, yeah, and it's also kind of weird. Um, it takes place in Utah.
Utah. Really?
Yeah, which is where I'm from.
Not the most
So
Christmassy of places, you'd think. So
it kind of is though, because okay, so if you think about like if you just like imagine in your mind's eye, you're like, what does Colorado look like in your head? It's like mountains,
mountains,
snow.
snow-capped mountains.
What people imagine as Colorado is actually what Utah looks like.
Yeah, when I think of Utah, I think of salt flats and like buttes
Yeah,
and
see, isn't that
mesas
kind
and
of weird? So when people imagine Colorado in their head, what they're seeing in their head is actually what Utah looks like.
huh. Oh no, you know
So
what? I
yeah.
did see that. I think your mom posted a picture in the Discord of her like view outside her office window and it was like
Mhm.
this big ass mountain
Oh,
like off
yeah,
in the
so
distance.
it's been kind of a weird thing for me, like, leaving Utah, because it's basically I lived in the Salt Lake Valley, which is this huge mountain range that kind of, like, is almost in a circle
Mm,
around the valley, and so I've
yeah.
always been surrounded by mountains where you can see mountains on all sides,
Yeah.
and it's very uncomfortable for me to not be able to see mountains in the distance, so California is kind of weird for me because there are mountains here, but I can't really see them,
It's a lot of rolling
so
hills
I
too.
feel, like, naked almost where I'm like, "Where are the mountains?"
Where is all the
I'm
earth?
very uncomfy. Yeah. So yeah,
I love
I really
Washington.
it's
If
beautiful.
you do end up going to Washington, if you're anywhere near the Puget Sound, you'll be seeing Mount Rainier a lot, and that's
Ah,
like the
it's
big one on
beautiful.
the West Coast. It's really cool. Yeah.
It's beautiful. I would love let's just all actually, you know what? I'm on like the Canada train right now. Let's all move to Canada. That's the train I'm on right
If we
now.
move to Canada, I'm going into the North Territories, the
That's
Yukons,
fine. You have to
in the
just be
middle of
able to
nowhere.
like come visit. That's fine.
Yeah. Canada's big.
You just have to be able to come visit.
A
Like
30-hour drive.
if you have to figure out how to get there, that's on you.
We'll be in a bush plane
But
or something flying over.
yeah. 100%. Alrighty, let's get into the nitty gritty of this. I kind of started writing a description for each chapter, but then I realized I was like just writing like a whole chapter as I was writing the description of each chapter. So I'm not going to tackle the synopsis this time. I think
Okay,
I'm just going to like just let us like freeform talk and see where
cool.
our talk takes us. One of the things I have some notes. One of the first things I did note was, can you imagine? This is specifically from the prologue. Can you imagine trying to outrun a plague? Because that's kind of what they're doing at the beginning, right? Like
Yeah.
they're coming from Brisa to Oliveris, um,
Yep.
for like a marriage that's supposed to stop this war that's been going on for 52 years and all that stuff.
Hmm.
Um, but at the end of the day, they're kind of trying to outrun this plague and they're dropping their party members like flies. And
Yeah.
it's crazy.
You're talking about Jahan's group with Ventilus when they first enter and they start
Mhm.
heading towards the Mary King Rand. Yeah.
Mhm.
It's weird because during, of course, our pandemic, it's very much like just stay inside, don't move, like, just try and do as little as possible. These guys are actually like running from it and like
Yeah.
trying to end this war early because they have to deal with this other major threat.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's very interesting. Which
It's
again,
going across both countries.
yeah, again, that's why I pulled so much from A Plague Tale Requiem, because that's literally like the basis of the storyline is you're running from this plague, even though technically in the game the plague's being caused by one of the characters. No spoilers, but but yeah, it's really cool to see that.
Yeah. Um, it's also really interesting to kind of see how they like kind of try and handle this because they don't really know what's causing the plague, right?
No.
This isn't like modern medicine era where they can like study all of this stuff. They just have ideas for where they think that it might be coming from and they're trying to figure that out from there. And so I think that makes it like that much more deadly because they don't know what's going on, right? So you
Yeah.
can't be like it's the rats, keep things clean,
Mhm.
kill the rats, keep them out of the city, everything will be fine.
Yeah, I think there was that scene where the city inspector and Cass are in a inn, and the innkeepers are talking to them. And the city
Aspar.
ins is
I
that
have the
his name?
names of everybody.
Oh wow, that's
I
a
wrote down
that's
all
a
the
small
character names.
character.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's there, and the city inspector comes up to him and gets mad at him because he caught 10 rats. Which, by the way, it was
Mhm.
cool. The city inspector was walking with two cats, and that's how he inspected a place:
Mhm.
is releasing cats to go kill the
That
rats,
made
and
me
then he had
so
a bag of
happy.
them. But he's like, "Hey, this is what spreads the plague," and the basically the innkeeper got like mad at him, like, "That's not what it is. We're in a city. We have to live with rats. Like, it's airborne. It
Mhm.
has nothing to do with these fleas or whatever." And knowing
Yeah,
from
and he was
history,
going based
the
on
city inspector was probably right.
science.
Yeah.
Well, he was, like, talking he specifically cited a scientific source,
Yeah, who, the city
which
inspector?
is yeah, the
Mhm.
city infector was, like, talking about, like, "Well, this scientist thinks that it might be coming from the rats, so I'm not taking any chances,"
Yep.
which is so interesting that he's, like, specifically citing science. Anyways, I
Yeah.
enjoyed that. So, yeah, no, I have a huge list of character names, so if you need a character name
It's a lot of characters in this. Lord.
so many characters. I've done this for all of the books that we've read so far, but this is by far the most characters, where there were a lot of
Yeah.
characters that were kind of one off. They kind of come in and out. Like I have a
Mhm.
character, there's Thiago. He's just one of the city soldiers. Didn't really come in, but I
Thiago.
didn't I didn't even know if like these characters were gonna come in or out. So um I do
Yeah.
have to say it kind of helped me a couple times as I was reading the book because I would be like, wait, do I know this person? And then you go back and
Yep.
you're like, oh, you saw him at this time. And yeah.
Mhm.
So good ideas, but moving forward, I'm probably gonna do a document, like a Google sheet, and just have like a list of characters and
Oh,
locations and
that'd be a
stuff.
good idea. Yeah.
And then I can share that with you.
You share it with
But
everyone that watches
it's just
this
been
if they wanna
yeah.
follow along.
Yeah. So yeah, that is the like the prologue, I guess.
Mhm.
How did I was kind of it was kind of jarring for me going from the prologue to the actual book because I wasn't expecting Cass to be the main character. I don't know why, but like, I wasn't ready for the jumping character, and I was kind of surprised.
Yeah. I think they presented it well, though. Like,
Oh,
once
no,
you were
yeah, for
pretty
sure,
much
but,
alone with Cass on that road while he was basically trying to get back to Palmyra. Is that his city?
um, Palmerin.
Palmerin? Yeah, once he's trying to get back, you realize, okay, this is the guy that we're gonna be following. And you're sort of alone with him for the first few chapters while he speaks to Izozo,
Who
the
are you asking
gatekeeper,
about?
the
Oh, the
bridge
Izaro.
tollkeeper. Izaro, that's his name. He sort of comes across his cabin, speaks to his spirit, which that's a whole sort of subplot that they don't dig into a lot that
How do
I
you feel
want to
about
talk
them
about.
coming back to that to the end?
I loved it. I thought it was a really nice way to like just tie a little ribbon up. That to me, if the book ended right there with them burying him and giving him his last rites and him having a conversation with him, I would have been happy. I'm not like
Everybody else would have been mad though.
everyone else would have been mad because everyone wants to see the romance play out, but like
Yeah.
that to me was very much a good way to just be like, it's over. Like his life is back to normal. He's sort of put away his past. So I thought that was a really cool way. For, like you were talking about earlier when we were talking about storytelling in the Game Awards predictions, how Elden Ring did that, where they played the opening
They play the
theme
opening theme.
and then
Mhm.
they don't play it again until the end. And I felt this had that sort of way of doing things
Cap
where you
end.
start
Yeah.
the book there and then you cap it off back at that same location. And I loved it.
I did enjoy that. I was really glad that they came back. I thought that was a really good way to not only finish like the storyline with Izaro, but also finish the storyline with Lena because that's where they met the first time as well.
Yep.
So I thought that that was a really good that was a really well crafted and well thought out like beat in the story where it's like we start here, end here, kind of tie things
Yeah.
together.
And it sort of rounded out Cass's character development
Mhm.
because he very much was running from his past and trying to get away from it. And I think
Yeah.
that was the final thing where it was like, this was the beginning of everything. And now it's time to put this to bed. Because
Yeah.
he started the book with a regret. He left the toll keeper there weeping over his own grave,
Mhm.
which I mean that was a cold thing to do, but obviously Cass had a lot to do. I
Yeah.
mean he was escaping from prison after being in there for 3 years. He had to get back home to see what was
And
going
plus his
on,
horse was
but
getting stolen.
and his horse was getting stolen. Yeah, that too. But he didn't take the time to give him his last rites, and so it was
Yeah.
nice to see him
I
come
think there was
back and
also
right
like
that
a
wrong.
little bit of religious trauma there maybe.
Yeah, he definitely has that, and you know, I think you see that in a lot of like POWs in the real world,
Mhm.
where you know people are tortured, people are held against their will for so long, and they just lose faith in anything. He has a lot of trauma that he has to work through. He has that trauma.
Yeah.
Obviously, anybody touching him throughout this book, that's a theme. He starts to warm up to it a little more. He holds back, flinches, and everything. He has the physical scars from his captivity that
Yeah.
he's sort of ashamed of, especially like I think there was that one scene where the tailors were making him clothes, and everyone was sort of watching it as it was happening, which by the way, bonkers. Why aren't you doing that in like a private room? But he's basically out in like an open area getting his tailor stuff done, and they tell him to take off his shirt, and like he was wincing. He's like, I don't want to do it, and he just did it, and you could hear like everyone whispering and people
Yeah.
talking about it, and yeah, it was
I
rough
did
to
like
actually go through
that
that.
part where like it was like you have to take your clothes off. But what I really did love that whole scene. First of all, I thought it was
Yeah,
so funny, like with the fitting and like the ladies coming to like watch him. And
that was funny.
they definitely made a big dick reference, like
No,
100%.
they did. Yeah,
And
100.
I
Yep.
was like, I couldn't stop laughing in that
Like,
scene.
where
Like
did that come from?
it was just so funny that
What
it
did he
was just
say? It was, "Are you wearing padding?" And he's like,
yeah.
"No." And they're like, "Oh."
It was so
It's like,
good.
good lord.
I really enjoyed that scene and all like the gossiping and like, oh, he's so cute kind of thing. I thought
Yeah,
that was fun. I
yeah.
did not like they like obviously like in terms of like his character, I felt really awful for him.
Oh, yeah.
But I did like the way that the queen was like, everybody get the fuck out.
Yeah,
Like
that was
like
what I
the
was gonna
queen
say.
stepping up and like offering that connection to him, I think was really powerful and a really good moment. I loved that part.
And, I guess we could talk about the queen for a little bit and her character, Queen Jahan.
Which one?
Yeah, I know, right?
How did you feel about that reveal? Like, really, I have to, like, I gasped
It
so
was
loud.
I didn't see it coming whatsoever.
I
Like, it
didn't
was
either.
completely out of left field, but I could see it so vividly, like, the faces that everyone was making when they were in the basement of that doctor's house, and it all came to like, who was the guard's name? Joter? Uh,
Are you talking about the friend? Bitter?
Bitter, that's his name. Yeah, Bitter. See, I'm not good with names, even though I literally just read most of the book today.
Literally.
Literally. Um, Bitter. Or is it Bitor? Like, I think he
It's
got
Bitor. Yeah.
mad about pronouncing
It's
his name.
pronounced BIH-TOR.
Bitter. I'm gonna say bitter
Mhm.
because he gets mad at it. But you could like that scene where he opens the box and he's trying to stay away from Cass and Lena, and like the author describes like you could see the moment that the realization hit him, and then that whole scene that
Mhm.
plays out later. But I think the queen throughout, you could see her kindness. You could see how she wasn't like other royalty, whether it be giving Clara the bath
Yeah,
after
I
they
just thought
found
she was, like,
her,
really
or
good. I didn't
she was an
realize.
incredible person. And like throughout the whole book, you look at her like a saint. Like she's just a
Mhm.
benevolent queen. She's kind. She's everything you'd want in a queen, right?
Mhm.
To a realm. She's
She is a
perfect for the
fantastic
role,
queen.
right? And then obviously the reveal makes you conflicted, and then it's revealed though that it was a mutual agreement, that
Mhm. That
she
was the
take
moment that I
over.
was like, "That's not even fair to even kind of blame her."
Yeah, no, that was that we can get into that a little later. That's this
That's
Princess
dark.
Jahan, this horrible person.
Horrible.
But yeah, I loved her character. I think throughout she was kind to everyone she met, and she just let out or displayed an air of authority in her kindness. And I think that was really well conveyed in the writing. And
Absolutely.
yeah, it was great. Any interaction she had with whether it be Cass or Lena or any of the other characters, I was always really interested reading that.
Mhm. I really enjoyed the part where it was basically I guess I enjoyed the interactions as far as, like, I really enjoyed the way that she recognized why Cass didn't like her and accepted that, of, like, "I
Yep.
represent a kingdom that has done horrible things to you, and I'm not going to fault you for that."
And like being a queen, she didn't have to do that. She could
Mhm.
have told him to shut his mouth, not speak, and she would have been well within her
"I'm your
right to do it.
queen."
She's the
Mhm.
queen. But she treated Cass with a lot of respect.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that might have to do too with she's not necessarily the royalty here, right? Like at the
Yeah.
end, she was just a normal, like a
But she does
handmaiden
kind of
to.
wield that power, right? When
She
she like,
does.
specifically in that moment where she was like, "I understand today, but tomorrow this won't happen again." Like,
Yep.
that moment, that's very much like her showing her power as queen, like, "Hey, I accept this blame today, but
Yeah.
tomorrow you can't treat me the same way because I cannot pardon you again."
And obviously that was like their first interaction, right? Like so
Mhm.
there is going to be some coldness towards it. But I think throughout, I think her and Cass became closer, and she sort of
Yeah.
trusted him a lot. Obviously he became like hand to the queen, got the ring,
Mhm.
protected
I
her
did
all the
not
way
see
up
that
until
coming
the end.
either.
That was really cool. He had like the unofficial role at first, and then by the end of the book, after he
Boots to the
saved her
official
life, he
role.
actually was kneeling before the king to get his fitted ring and everything, and that was really awesome. I love
Mhm.
that.
Yeah. I think the reason I really loved that scene that we were talking about where she's like, "Don't do this again," is that it's very much it shows her like, it's her showing her kind side where she's like, "I'm
Yep.
still, like, a human," and then
Mhm.
immediately, like, enforcing, like, her boundaries almost of,
Yeah. Like
like,
she's
it
drawing
shows
the
that
line
she's
in
a
the
really
sand.
strong person, but she still treats people with kindness,
Yeah.
and I think that's kind of what makes her such a good queen.
Yep.
Um, speaking of the king was really not in this. And I was like, I'm
Yeah.
not mad about it, but it was just, like, interesting that he just really didn't have a huge role to play. How would you feel if you found out your wife was actually not your wife, but still your wife?
That would be such a weird thing. Obviously, I don't think that scenario can really happen outside of like arranged marriages like this.
Mhm.
So
And
obviously
it
like a
couldn't happen even
natural.
in modern day because, like, there's
Yeah.
no way
There's no
because you'd be able
way.
to see what people look like with
Exactly.
technology, so
Yeah, so this is very much something in a specific scenario that might happen back in the day, but putting myself in those shoes, oh man, I that would be difficult because like she's still the person you've loved all this time. She's still the mother of your child. Like
yeah, nothing
it's
about her personality has changed.
exactly like, and in reality, it was an arranged marriage in the first place. You didn't know what she looked like, who she was, how she was, what her personality was before you saw her for the first time. You could have thrown any random woman up there and said, "This is Jahan," right?
Uh-huh.
And the king would have believed it because he had no prior experience with her. So,
Especially
like,
when his best friend is verifying, "Yes, this
yeah,
is Princess Jahan," like,
um, I
Jahan.
would feel very betrayed by the people I know, which I think what King Rayan Is that his name?
Ryan, yeah.
Ryan. I think he handled this probably how I would handle it. Like I'd be very like upset for a while because like so many people betrayed me and my trust has been completely betrayed to
Mhm.
the people I'm closest with. But at the end, he sort of came around to it, especially when he's after his
The
wife.
reveal that it was, like,
Yeah, especially
agreement.
after Cass saved the Queen Jahan's life, and he
Mm.
realized how much danger she was in. And I think in that moment, when they found them in the aqueduct, he realized how much he loved her and his
Well, I think
son.
he found out before that too, like, he kind of made, like he's like, "I don't want to send them anywhere, because he went to go get them
Yeah.
before, like, they knew anything was wrong.
Oh,
He had
really?
already made the decision. Yeah, that's how they ended up there, was because they were looking for the party, and then they met up with the
I
other
see. Yeah.
party, and they're like, "Hey, where's the queen?" And they're like, "We don't know where the queen is."
Huh.
So, he had already made that decision independent of the danger that he would
Yeah.
rather be with her, and he had made a mistake.
Yeah, it would be
Um,
very he probably, like, did a knee-jerk reaction, like, "Get out of here. I'm not gonna
yeah.
kill you or anything," but then, like, once he lost her and realized what his life was gonna be without her and the child, he was like, "No, I can't do that. We
Mhm.
gotta go figure it out," so, a lot of conflicting emotions there for that king, but I think he handled it
You
pretty
know,
well.
I think this almost could have been split into another book. Like, I think you really could have expanded, because Lady Rondella, who's like the twin sister of the High Counselor Amador, like, I think you could have dove into like the court inner workings. Like,
Yeah, there was a lot of little lore pieces that they put in there,
uh
about how the king was supposed to initially marry King Ramad Queen Ramadada. Again, you just said the name, but I can't.
Rondella, Lady Rondella.
Lady Rondella. He was supposed to marry her before the king of the nation they were at war with proposed the
Uh-huh.
peace to marry his daughter.
I'm really
So
glad they didn't get married. She's kind of slimy.
oh, she's horrible, horrible. Like when
I don't like her brother either.
that scene when I officially said I hate her, I can't stand her anymore because I
Mhm.
thought maybe she's just a cold person, whatever. Like just let it
Mhm.
off. When Clara, when they first found her, gave her that bath, cut her hair, they needed to give her clothes. They said
And she
Lady
refused.
Rondella's child was the same size as Clara, but she refused to
Mhm.
give her clothes, and so they had to go to another person to get some clothes, but they were a little too big for Clara.
Mhm.
I was like, you are just a disgusting, despicable person,
Disgusting human. Uh-huh.
but in the end, I think a lot of her bitterness probably is justified because she was supposed to marry the king. Like, that's a big deal, right?
Yeah,
Like,
but at the
that
same time,
ensures
it's
your
not like she's
family
like a
power.
lowly person, you know? Like,
Right.
her brother is still the high counselor to
They
the
said something
king.
about how they're the richest family in the entire
Uh-huh.
kingdom, and if they married, they would have money enough for 10 generations or something like
Uh-huh.
that. So, yeah, she's definitely not
So
a
she's
lowly
living in
person, but
privilege.
she is. Yeah,
And I don't think that
for
she
sure.
loved the king either. I think it was just like a slight to her reputation, you know?
It's a power move, yeah, to
Yeah,
her.
absolutely. The thing
Not to
I
say
have
that
to point
Jahan
out,
and the king actually love each other, who knows? It's an
they
arranged
do.
marriage.
They say that explicitly.
Yeah, but,
They
like,
say
how
that
much of
like
that is
like
natural? Because I never trust these political arranged marriages, like, it just
well, I
feels
trust
weird to
though,
me.
because specifically they talked about it's the way that he looks at her. Like, when he's like
Yeah,
banishing her, they're like, the way that he looked at her, this will be resolved. Like, he
that's
loves
true.
her very much.
And that I think that speaks to a lot about who Queen Jahan is, going back to her character, how kind
Hmm.
she is to everybody, and I think any king would, of course, fall in love with, even if it is an arranged marriage, once you
Hmm.
saw how that person actually was and seeing how kind and gentle she was to her
Hmm.
people, yeah, he would fall in love with her for sure.
Absolutely. I have to say, so far, really quick, High Counselor Amador, my first note on him is homophobe, because I was so mad at him. Where they were like, yeah, you can't let him know that Ventilus and Kim were together. And I was like, you're
Mm,
disgusting.
yeah,
Oh my
yeah.
god, that part at Kevin's grave was so sad,
Yeah,
where he
that
was
was
like, "Please
rough.
don't let him come back." Like,
That was a
that made me
really tough
cry.
line, and I think, that was one of the points I wanted to make talking about this sort of subplot where Cass could see some spirits and how much it didn't come up as often as I thought it would. Like after the
Mhm,
first few chapters when we met that toll keeper, I was like, okay, this is going to be a theme throughout the book. But in reality, it didn't come up often. But when it did come up, it was really impactful and it
mhm,
changed how the entire sort of narrative felt. That
yeah,
one was really sort of heartbreaking, That one got an emotional response. There was one on the side of the road that I really enjoyed, where they found the bodies of two basically commoners who got attacked by some lynx.
Uh-huh.
And that commoner was able to warn him of the lynx up ahead, and that sort of helped him protect the whole convoy of the king and the queen and the child and everything like that.
Mhm.
So love all those interactions with the spirits, even if they weren't talking. Um,
The
like
one with the
just
cook's kid as well got
that
me.
one's
Where
rough.
it was
And I
like where it was like,
yeah.
"Hey, I just want can I hang out with the lynx? Like, can you go get the
Hmm.
lynx for me?" Like, I was like, "Oh."
The first time when you see the kid when they're in the kitchen with the cook, that was
Mhm.
really tough. He I think the descriptor was like kneading dough
Mhm.
and throwing flour from a time past, and I was like,
Mhm.
"Whoa," it like almost got me. And then when he
Mhm.
finally talked to the kid, I was so happy that he got a moment alone with him to be able to
Yeah.
acknowledge him and like say, "Hey, I see you. Like we
Yeah.
can talk and everything." And he comforted him in a way, and it was really nice.
Yeah, because it must be so lonely being in that stuck
Yeah.
place. Like,
Hmm.
uh I it really it's really interesting the way that, like you were saying, like, that they used that, like, I don't wanna say, like, power, but, like, I mean, that's kind of what it is, right?
Yeah.
In that, like, it was very much like it's a response from his trauma, so it's almost like a PTSD thing where after, like, he got up from the plague, like, he just suddenly can see ghosts, and I
Yeah.
can't,
And it's
like.
real. Like, it's not like a
Mhm,
figment of his imagination because obviously that warning of the lynx was true. Like,
mhm,
so, like, he's actually talking to these people and they don't address it. Like,
yeah,
they let it be. They let it just be a part of the world, and I really thought that was cool. At first, I was like, "I wanna know more about this power," but as we went through, I was like, "You know what? I think it's fine just knowing that he can do this, and it's just part of the
mhm.
storytelling," and it was really cool.
It was a really unique way to kind of handle, like, a magic system where it was just kind of there, like you were
Yeah.
saying, and it's not, like, thrown in your face or, like, really used a lot. It was just more of just, like, this is just how he lives his life now after all of
Yeah.
this craziness. So,
At
I
first,
did
it scared
really
me
enjoy
because I
that.
remember the anime Maruko-chan, where
Oh.
she can see spirits and they're all like awful, nasty, terrible spirits. And like when I could tell he was trying to avoid looking at people, I thought that it was going to be like bad every time he saw them. But
Mhm.
eventually, you realize like, oh, okay, these are just people that are still around and they can
Yeah,
talk to you and stuff.
yeah. Um yeah, it's good. I really did enjoy it, but, yeah, the Kevin part was definitely the breaking point for me. I was like, "No!"
Yep.
It was so sad,
Yeah, it
just
was.
seeing his brother. The other thing so I kinda wanted to talk about Lord Ventilus, like the brother, not the
Yeah.
not the
Yep.
baby.
Not the baby because of what's the
Um
same. Yeah.
I kind of wanted to talk about that for a minute and just that, like, it's interesting in the way that, like, you're almost seeing the way that when you grow up, you realize that your parents are also human beings. Like, when you're a kid,
Mm,
you kind of see, like, these, like, your parents as, like, these, like, perfect beings that don't,
yep.
like, not that they don't do wrong, but it's, like, more of just, like, they just know better kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Hmm.
And Cass very much has this relationship with his brother where his brother is kind of his dad.
Yep.
And so you're kind of seeing that shifting of, like, he's not just, like, my role model anymore. He's
He's my peer.
clearly a real human being that
Yep.
needs help and can't just take care of me all the time. And
Yeah.
he's very much like a broken person, right? His, like,
Yeah. He's very broken.
lover is gone.
Yeah.
And he didn't even get to say goodbye because he left to come back, and when he came back, his lover was gone.
Yeah, that scene where they show him basically passed out at the grave, that was obviously a rough one. And then I forget if the conversation was between Cass and King Ryan or Cass and Captain Lorenz.
Mhm.
But one of them was talking to him about Ventilus and basically saying he'll disappear for a week at a time. He's never been the same. He's falling apart. He's not
That was
himself, sort of
Lawrence.
thing. That was
Mhm.
Captain Lorenz.
Mhm.
And so I think
They were
that
trying to hide
was
it from the king.
they were trying to hide it from everybody. Yeah. And I think that was sort of a turning point for Cass where he realized like I need to be the one to step up here and protect my brother and help him through this. Which like you said in the past, it was always the opposite where Cass looked up to his brother and he brought him through it. And I really like that juxtaposition.
Mhm. How did you feel about the ending? I felt very satisfied where it was like he promised he'll see me again in 5 years, and, like, living on that promise. Like, I
Yeah.
thought that was a really, like, powerful ending.
Yeah, I think that was as good of an ending as you're gonna get. I fully expected the king to kill Ventilis and like give it over to Cass, and I was
I was
really
very scared. Yeah.
I was worried, and even going back to when he discovered it, I thought Cass might even turn on Ventilis and be mad at him about this, but he
Mm.
immediately went to his side and defended him, even
I
though
thought the
maybe
same.
he did it the wrong way. But he did end up defending Ventilis, which surprised me. I thought Cass was going to go a different route there, but
Yeah, I mean, the thing is like, I don't even know if that's, like it's not even, like, a fair situation because like, what do you do when you realize the queen is actually not the queen? Like, that
yeah,
would be such a crazy moment that, like, your emotions would run wild and just, like, your brain racing, like, "What does this mean for my brother?" Like, he's clearly like, the king is going to find out. I don't want my brother to die,
yeah,
just that, like, wild moment and, like, how many thoughts your would race through your brain, there's no way you can think clearly in that moment.
yeah. And not only
That's just
that,
too crazy.
Lena brought up the point that if this was discovered, the war could just restart.
Mhm.
Like there's a
This
lot
isn't
at
just about
play.
his brother. Yeah.
Exactly, but to him, that's all it's about, right? During that
Mhm.
scene, all he could think about was how would this affect my brother? And
Mhm.
that's a fair thing to think. Like he loves him, he looks up to him, and he wants to take care of him. And that must have been a very difficult decision. Obviously, he attacked Bitor,
Mhm.
had that sort of fight with him, ended up getting chained up, which that was scary for that
Yeah, I
character,
actually kinda
seeing him
wanted to
chained
talk
up.
about that for
Yeah.
just a moment. I actually highlighted this because this was such a powerful moment for me, and I specifically noted that I wanted to talk about this. But this moment where
Hmm.
she said she had left him,
Yep.
she had left him here knowing what she knew, having seen the scars, the branding on his wrist, the candle flickered out, it went out. Cass was left with his chains in the darkness, and something deep within him died.
Yeah.
Like, she knew. And she left, and it's kind of revealed later that she didn't realize that he was tied up,
Yeah, because
but,
that was all
like, at the
Bitor.
same time, that was, like, such an awful moment.
Yeah, because in that moment, he felt completely abandoned by those people,
Yeah, that
and,
really
like,
got me, that was, like, really, like that
it
hurt my
it was
chest.
like it felt like all the progress that we had made in his character development
Mhm.
died in that moment because it was like he started trusting people again, he started getting friends again, he
It was
started getting
broken.
acclimated to his world outside of the prison he was in, and then bam, he's right back in a
Mhm.
dark dungeon, chained to a wall, and it was like, how is he gonna recover? And he reacted, obviously, I don't want to say poorly because I think he had every reason to be mad once Lena came back and
Mm.
unlocked him. And he's like, get away from me. I don't want to do it. And he lashed out at her and he left her there.
Yeah.
Which, I just think there's a lot of trauma there that he needed to work through. And I think that's a response that makes sense. And I wish Lena had realized that sooner. Lena giving him the cold shoulder when he came back and he walked into her estate with all the historians there, and she sort of talked to him like he was just another lord that she had to meet. I was like,
He's the
that's
one that
pretty
said that,
cold.
though. He said,
But
"You've helped enough, don't come near me again."
that's what I'm saying. I think that's a reasonable reaction, and Lena
Ye I'm not saying
should
he's
have
not being
understood that.
reasonable, but I also, like, I understand, like, kind of the way that she
Yeah,
reacted, because that
yeah.
would also hurt on her part, I
It would
guess.
hurt her
You
too, I
know?
guess. It's tough. I think it's just all these people went through way too much trauma, and
So much.
they it's to the point where it's like you can't really deal with it a good way. There has to be
Mhm.
some lashing out here and there. Like that must have been awful for him to be chained up like that. But yeah, that cold moment from Lena, that sort of like come on, you can't be like that to him. Like you know what you did. You may not have
Mhm.
done it yourself, but like how it played out in his mind.
Mhm.
But in the end,
Absolutely.
it worked out. They got together. Romance continues.
Yes, it does. I'm glad that it worked out. I kind of liked the way that it worked out because it allowed him time to heal. And I feel like in a lot of these stories, it's just about like getting
Yeah.
together. Like it's like Frozen is another one that kind of makes fun of this, where it's like they fall in love in 5 minutes and
Yep.
bing bang, you're done, kind of thing.
Yeah. Their
Um,
relationship went through ups and downs, and then they gave each other space, and he went back
Absolutely.
to Palmera,
Almarin.
rebuilt aqueducts, rebuilt walls, did architecture projects back to what he was doing before, and
And he was
then
able to
Lena.
heal a little bit too. Like I'm
Yep.
sure it's not fixed because I don't think it'll ever really be fixed, but
Yeah,
it allows him
physical and
time to.
mental. He had a lot of physical
Mhm.
wounds leaving, King Ryan and all of them. But he
Mhm.
got his footing under him, and then Lena comes back into his life, and he's able to accept her.
Absolutely. So I had two other questions for you and two other things that I kind of wanted to talk about. I'm sure I'll think of other stuff that I want to chat. But
Oh
one,
yeah,
how did you feel about Bitter's character, or Bittor's character?
I loved
Um,
his character.
he was so funny.
I liked how he was sort of the aloof character and all this, but there were times where he became very serious. And like
Mhm.
you could tell like he was a goofy guy, but he was still one of like
He was
the
still a
king's most
soldier.
trusted soldiers, and he was still
Mhm.
a tough guy. He fought the lynxes. That scene where they were riding to the doctor's house, Lena, Cass, and Bidor, and I think they said something about how like under normal circumstances Lena would laugh because Bitter was like his helmet was on weird or something like that. But in this
Mhm.
moment, everyone was stoic, like on their horses, and Bitter was very
Mhm.
serious throughout that whole time. I loved Bitter's character, I really did, and I think
Mhm.
he was a loyal soldier. He played that part very well, and he was goofy. He provided sort of a comic relief, some lightness to the storytelling, but then he turned on that soldier switch when he needed to, and it was
Absolutely.
badass. I loved it.
I really actually loved the moment when it was kind of revealed, Esty revealed that his family is actually all dead,
Yeah.
because that was such an interesting moment where he had like he wasn't hiding it,
Hmm.
but he also wasn't like saying like, oh yeah, my whole family's died kind of thing. He was just like, oh yeah, my sister, my sister's name was Clara, and she
Yep.
passed away like last year. And then it's kind of like, well, no, like she didn't just pass away last year. It was
The
like his
whole
whole
family.
family is gone.
Yep. Yeah.
I think
It's
that's such an interesting moment for his character, because it's almost like I can't tell if it's like a he just doesn't want to burden other people, or if he just doesn't want to talk about it,
that's his way of
or
coping with it.
exactly, cuz like he also kind of talks about his family in the current tense where he's like, "Oh yeah, my family is wool merchants."
Yeah.
So is it like an acceptance thing? I don't know. But I
It
thought that was
could be
such an
just
interesting
a
moment.
way of moving on with life. This book actually had a really diverse range of people handling trauma differently. And I
Mhm.
thought that was cool. Cass is very reserved and he doesn't speak to many people and he doesn't like to be touched. And then you have Bidor, like you were saying, he's sort of aloof and just kind of moving on with life. Like he's
Mhm.
trying not to be affected by it or talk about it. There's a
And then
lot of
with
different
Ventilus
ways
as
people
well,
do.
you get like the almost like the drunk, or
The
like the
drunk,
person that turns to
sloppy.
like
Yeah.
drugs and alcohol kind of person. Like there's a
Yep.
lot of different ways that people deal with grief, and I think you kind of almost get like the whole spectrum here.
Yeah. You get a lot because there's a lot of grief to go around in this
Mhm.
world. It's a very, very tough world.
Absolutely. Interesting. Okay, I want to touch on one more thing and then we'll talk about the doctor stuff. So, um I wanted to touch on like Pharaoh, which Pharaoh is the private secretary that was in love with Sorn and then was banished after his hand getting cut off, and then he
Mm,
was murdered. How
yes.
did you feel about all of that? How did you feel about Ventilus murdering him anyways? Like,
Um,
'cause
honestly,
I was kind of upset, and that kind of set up, like, the distrust of Ventilus for me, where I was like, "What is he hiding?" Because you knew he was kind of hiding something, but then I kind of got a gross feeling about it where I was like, "This seems like, I don't know." I was, like, really like, Cass had very expressly said, "I don't want him dead."
yeah, like I said, I didn't see any of this coming where Ventilus was working with Queen Jahan to sort of cover up this whole thing that happened. But in that moment, I chalked it up to Ventilus still doesn't respect Cass as a man. Or I thought it could have been that in a drunken stupor, like we know he's doing, or in a fit of rage, he just did it.
Mhm.
So I chalked it up to either one of those two options of why he did it because at first when they first reunited and with Cass, Ventilus was out like he was pissed. He was out for
Mhm.
anger. He was cold towards Queen Jahan just because she was from that nation that held him.
Mhm.
He wanted to basically kill everyone involved, and I think they got that letter saying that he was captured, but they didn't believe it. Anyone who covered up that letter, he wanted them dead.
It
Like
was
he
just one
was
person, though. It was
Oh
crazy.
yeah, that
It
just
was just
stopped the note.
Pharaoh.
Yeah, and I mean, from the beginning, you knew he wanted to kill him, right?
Mhm.
So I don't know. That's
Do you
what I
think you would
chalked
have
it up. To.
reacted the same way?
Um, Like
Because I
it.
don't think I would have. I think I would have respected Cass's wishes
Oh,
personally.
you're saying okay, if Cass had told me like I don't want you to kill him.
Hmm.
I mean, there is a time and place where if you're the leader, you have to make the decision, even if people around you are telling you not to do something.
Yeah, where
Sometimes,
like Cass kind of said if the roles were reversed, I probably would have done the same thing, kind of
yeah, like
thing.
obviously there's a bit of executive privilege sort of thing that goes on there, where it's
Mm.
like you're emotional right now. I need to make this decision because I believe it to be right. But I think if it was my brother, I don't have a brother, so I don't really know the connection of a brother or a sibling. Really, I have step sisters and sisters in law, but I never like grew up with them and everything like that. So I don't know that sort of deep connection. So I can't really relate to it. But I'm sure it's very deep. I'm sure you can attest to that because you have siblings.
No, I
Um,
hate them both. I'm just
oh,
kidding.
okay, yeah. So
I'm
you
just
would have
kidding.
just
I
killed
love my
that guy.
siblings.
But yeah, if one of
I
your
love my siblings
siblings
so
in that
much.
situation told you not to, what would you do? Because I think you probably have better insight into it.
I don't think I think I would have respected the wishes of my sibling. Like genuinely, because the thing is like what is Pharaoh going to do? Like
Yeah, he's
he's
already in the
losing his
dungeon.
dominant hand. He's already getting banished from his country. And I think that the
Yeah,
punishment of living, knowing that his love is gone, knowing that he got three people killed, on a fourth person brutally like
everything he's worked for and built is
traumatized,
gone.
scarred, everything's gone. And I think that that punishment is so much more than just being murdered.
Yeah, because you're sort of putting him out of his misery at that point.
Yeah.
Because like, who wants to sit in a cold medieval dungeon for the rest of their life? That
Yeah, and the other
send
thing
me.
is I echo the sentiment of Cass where it's like there's just too much death. And I think that he has that extra layer where he is seeing ghosts, so he's almost seeing the reflection of the plague in a different way where it's not just dead bodies and graves, it's also
Yeah,
the ghosts of people that are around him. So
yeah.
I think him saying like I'm done with death, I don't want any more death, I think is absolutely valid.
And
So I
Cass
think that
saying
I
that like
would have listened.
Cass is a victim of war, and
Mhm.
they always say the only people that want to go to war are people who have never been to war. That's the saying, and that rings true with
Mhm.
Cass is he's experienced that trauma of the war and of being a prisoner of war, and he doesn't want to see it anymore. He wants it all to end.
Mhm.
So,
Absolutely. Okay, let's go ahead and hit like the main story then, which is basically
all right,
like being that like there is this queen or princess, excuse me, and her friend Mari. Um,
Maria.
so yeah, Mari is her friend, and um, Princess Jehan ends up getting the plague. Says, "Hey, leave me here to die, but don't tell anyone. Just switch places with me because
Mm-hmm.
this is the only way to stop the war."
Yep.
And Mari's like, "I don't want to do this." And she's like, "You have to do it. Like, we don't have a choice."
Yep.
So they switch places. They leave her, they leave a huge lump sum to the nurse and say, "Hey, if anything happens, if she lives, let us know." They go.
Yep.
Um, and she ends up being taken, like the real Princess Jehan gets taken by Dr. Saulo,
Mm-hmm.
and experimented on in literally the most horrendous ways,
Oh,
like even imaginable to me.
yeah. I think he
Um,
removed her womb
yeah, he
was the main
removes her
because
uterus.
he wanted to see if a woman could survive without a womb, which
Hmm.
at the end, Princess Jahan says, well, you can.
Yep, she's like,
She
"I'm
has it.
living proof of that," and she's also said he also wanted to see if you could survive without a tongue, and
Yeah,
that's her
that's her
lover.
lover. Yeah. It's a pretty dark turn in the story for a dark world.
Yeah.
That was that whole scene when they first get to the doctor's house and they see the jars full of human body parts and hands and feet and eyeballs and brains. And then they find the womb jar and they sort of put two and two together and say that's probably her.
They said,
Um,
"I hope it's not her, but it
I
could
hope it's not
be,"
her, but it
right?
could be. But I think
It's
all of them deep
awful.
down kind of understood that that was probably
Yeah.
who it was. Doctor's the catalyst for all this. Could you? That's crazy to me.
Yep. It's Sister Yvette sells
Oh,
people to
sister
Saulo,
Yvette.
and what a horrible human being.
That character needs to have a head on the pike outside the
Mm-mm-mm.
castle gates. I'm telling you right now. Oh
I'm
man.
sure that Sister Rosalind did not take her back. She was probably at least out of a job, I'd hope.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just like so crazy to me because it's like there's no way that like the queen, Jehan, like, could have known that this had happened because,
Yep.
like, they left specific instructions to be told, but they were like, "Oh, well, she's dying anyways. I'm just gonna sell her to this doctor. She doesn't die." Like, these horrible things happen, and then she blames it on all the people that survived,
Which is nuts.
which is like, I understand that her mind's kind of broken from all of the torture and stuff, but I just can't imagine, like,
And that's another trauma response. There are people out there that become evil, when they
yeah,
experience trauma, and that's an unfortunate thing. And, that doesn't justify actions that they take. There's a lot of horrible people out in the world in real life and in fiction that their catalyst for their evil is the trauma. And I think out of anyone in this book, I would say she probably experienced the most.
absolutely. Because the thing is, like, we
Because
don't even know if they have pain medication. We don't know if they put her to sleep for the,
no, they
like,
probably
surgery. Like,
didn't
we
at
have
all.
no idea what happened.
Yeah, this
They
doctor looks
barely
at
touch
them
it.
as like animals that he's just experimenting on. I think that you could make an argument that Cass's trauma is worse, being 3 years imprisoned and tortured and stuff. But he had some
I
other
think
people
hers
there
would
with
be
him.
worse,
Hers,
honestly.
hers, hers could definitely probably be the worst of it all. And she responded by lashing out and blaming anybody involved, and that was unfortunate. But
Yeah. The
it
other
it
thing, that the other layer we don't know is, like, she could have also been sexually assaulted. Like,
yeah,
that's not far out of the realm of
I
possibility. And
think
when
they
you,
hinted at that.
mhm,
Did they?
it
What
felt kind of like they were, but it wasn't anything like super explicit.
they
So,
did hint at sexual assault at one point where
mhm.
it didn't happen, but like um when they were talking about when Cass left Lena alone to come back alone. And I
Oh,
think
yeah.
I
He was
guess
like,
what do you
something could
what
have
do you
happened
call
to her.
writing that's not a quote, but it's like part of the storytelling? You just say narrator. If there's like a word for that.
It's just the pros, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, but some of the writing said like he knew that what could happen to a young woman out on the road like that. Like,
Yeah.
so that obviously they confront that in the book, and I don't think it's out of the realm of possibilities. This doctor very much though was probably um, just a psychopath who wanted to see these medical experiments. I think that was his only goal.
Yeah. Uh, that's so crazy.
Yeah.
Um, man, I just, like, I can't even, some
People
of
are
this
people
stuff
are
is
probably
just,
listening to this and like, oh god, this book's depressing. It's dark. I'm telling you, it is. But like darkness in media, there's a lot of light in this too.
yeah,
Right?
of
There's a lot
course.
of
It's,
character development. There's a lot of healing. There's a lot of great moments. There's love. There's acceptance. There's reconciliation. There's a lot of
mhm.
great stuff out of this. But it's a long journey, and it's
I
it's
think
a
that
rough
this
one.
very, very much, like, faces the real parts of life, though, especially, like, as we're coming out of the pandemic. Like, it kind of, like, there are so, like, literally when somebody had said, like, I can't remember if it was, like, on the Kind of Funny podcast or if it was something else, but somebody had
Hmm.
said, like, "Oh, do you think anything will ever go back to normal?" And the answer is no. This literally, we can never go back to normal
There's no such thing as normal, anyways.
because of how many people are gone.
Yeah,
Like, there's no way to go back to normal.
yeah.
So, I think this is very much like this book kind of handles that, where it's like, it's not about going back to normal, it's about how do you move forward, with the
Hmm.
information provided, and
Moving
how do you
forward and
cope with the
surviving.
grief and stuff like that, yeah.
Yeah.
So, I really think that this is a fantastic book, and I think that because there is a note, I actually kind of wanted to, I think it's in here.
Hmm.
Um, let me find it. It was basically talking about, like, I think it's in this right here, but basically the author talked about, like, I almost didn't release this book because of the pandemic,
Oh, right.
but
Yeah, you were telling me
I
about that.
think that, like, this is what we needed in the pandemic kind of thing.
Hmm. And it's
Um,
it's weird to think of it that way because, like I was saying, it is a very dark book, and maybe giving people that darkness during a time of darkness might plunge them even further into like depression or sadness. But like
mhm,
I was saying before, there's a lot of bright moments here that we can sort of compare to some of the bright moments we've seen in our world. And I think that's a good way to look at things, that there's always something to look forward to, and we always got to push forward.
yeah, absolutely. A couple things that I wanted to chat about just to, like, finish things up here that I think are cool. So at the very end of the book, there's the author's note. I don't typically read these, but I did for some reason.
I haven't read it
Um,
yet. I'm going to read it after this. Yeah.
it's really good. No, it's very short, just like 2
Hmm.
pages here, but, yeah, so basically she's talking about how she was obsessed with the plague because she was obsessed with the idea that the plague does not play favorites. And I thought that
It's
was such an
unrelenting.
interesting note. It does not play favorites.
Nope.
it's an indiscriminatory murderer. Like, he
Yeah.
just comes and eats people up.
And it's something
The
you
other,
can't see. That's the scariest thing about it.
hmm So yeah, so she kind of talks about like her like beginning in the writing and like the plague and all that stuff. But the really cool part here, most curious of all, was a reference to Princess Joan, teenage daughter of England's Edward III. In 1348, Joan set sail from England to Spain to marry Pedro, heir to the kingdom of Castile. But Joan never reached Spain. She died en route in France of plague. There are different accounts as to where in France she was buried, but there's no record of her body being returned to London for burial. She left behind an unworn wedding dress made of fine silk racquemotiz, or however you say that word.
Oh.
So it's the same material that the wedding dress is made of out of in the book. So it's like a
So there's some
parallel
inspiration
story.
there.
Yeah, isn't that
Yeah,
kind of
that's
cool?
cool.
I thought that was so cool.
I love
I love
history, so
that.
I need to look into this. That sounds awesome. I
So
wanna read
cool.
that.
Yeah. And this last piece here, or I guess there's two other pieces. One, it's not difficult to imagine the nervousness and excitement of Princess Joan, that Princess Joan must have felt leaving home and heading off into the unknown. I must have been, or
Yeah.
I've been there myself. And she's kind of like talking about how she went off to college and stuff. And that's like, that's so true. She must have been so excited to go. She's like, go meeting this new person. She must have been nervous and she never made
Yeah.
it.
Never made it. It's a cruel world that they lived in back then.
Crazy.
Crueler than the one
Yeah.
we have now, believe it or not. It was rough back during the plague.
It's crazy times, man. Can't relate. At its heart, Year of the Reaper is a hopeful tale, a story of friendship and family, and the resilience of the human spirit. Cassia's spirit, in particular. I love this character, bruised and battered though he is, and I very much hope you enjoyed his story.
Yeah,
The last little note there, and
definitely.
I did enjoy the
Yeah.
story.
Someone that went through so much trauma, but took so much responsibility and did what he did with grace and accomplished what he needed to do.
Hmm
Very, very powerful character, I think. Cass, very good
Absolutely.
character. Yeah.
Yeah, very, like she said, very resilient. In many ways. Okay, so very cool, like little like author interview, really quick. It's very short.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's go.
Um, what inspired you to write Year of the Reaper? My first novel came out in 2014 and takes place right at the start of the 1918 Spanish flu pandemic. While I was writing, I found myself
Ooh.
wondering, well, what happened to the survivors, those forced to carry on? What's their story? That's what Year of the Reaper is ultimately about survivors of a terrible medieval plague.
Hmm.
Which I think we see a lot of stuff about like a plague itself, but not
Yep.
really the aftermath, which is kind of what we're living right now is like kind of the aftermath, you know?
Yeah.
Did you have to do any special research for Year of the Reaper? Absolutely. Reaper takes place after the Black Death of the 14th century. It also sets a fictional version of Spain. I read plenty of books on historical plagues, medieval Spanish dishes, ancient aqueducts, the training of engineers, the list goes on. I'm a former librarian and research for me is great fun, almost like a treasure hunt.
I love that how the author put in that extra work because, like, I think a lot of people in their minds when it comes to fiction, they just think of somebody sitting down and just making crap up in their head. This
Mhm.
person clearly didn't do that. Took a lot of inspiration from stuff, did her research, and yeah, there was a lot of things in there related to Spanish culture. Like I looked it up, like a lot of words, like food dishes. She mentioned there was like a lot during the cooking scenes or like when they were eating. They talked about traditional Spanish dishes, and I read all about
Mhm.
those. Like that's why I love my Kindle app because I can go to Wikipedia and read articles and stuff. So I was reading a lot about food in this. It was really cool.
Yeah, there's a lot into writing a book that people don't realize. Like if you think about writing
Hmm.
something like, for example, maybe not the best book ever written, but it's very interesting one, like the Da Vinci Code, like the amount of research that has to go into something like the Da Vinci
Yeah,
Code. It's not just like you just write a book, right? It's
yeah,
very much like heavily researched. So
yeah.
really cool stuff. I That's probably one of my favorite things. It's something I get lost in a lot when I start doing research. I kind of end up going down this huge rabbit hole,
Hmm.
but it's very fun. One of my favorite parts of writing. Okay, describe Year of the Reaper in 5 words: royalty, assassins, mystery, plague, and homecoming. Pretty good.
Pretty good. Yeah.
Can you tell us about your writing process? I always start off writing longhand, just a notebook and pencil and nothing else. I don't
Hmm.
typically outline my books, so every morning I'll look at the blank page on my notebook and start to write. Hopefully that eventually, the story will take shape and make some sort of sense. What was your favorite scene to write and why? I love all the scenes between Cass and Lena. Lena makes me laugh, and I love how she's able to make Cass smile whether he wants to or not.
Mm. Yeah,
Did you
Lena
listen?
is really the only character that could sort of put a chink in his
Mhm.
armor type
It's
of
so cute.
thing.
I highlighted it so many times where he was like, he
Now
looks
that
at
I'm
her,
thinking
he
of it,
smiles, or I'm like, "Oh," and I
because
highlighted it
Cass
all
can
the
be
time.
very one-dimensional towards most of the characters here. I think
Mhm.
Ventilis he has a special relationship with, but Lena specifically is like the only one outside of
He's
that
so
his
soft with her. Oh,
personal
I love
circle. Yeah, he's very different with her. Very cool.
it. It's so good. I love that so much. Okay. Did you listen to any particular songs or playlist while you wrote this? Nope. I listen or sorry, I need total silence when I write. Otherwise, I won't be able to hear the voices in my head.
I'd go, well, that sounds scary. I won't hear the voices in my head if I
It's
didn't.
so weird when I try to talk to people about my stories, particularly like there's a bigger book that I've been working on, or a bigger book series, I should say. Whenever I
Mhm.
try and talk to people about it, I talk like the characters are real people because in my mind they are real people. They exist. And so
Yeah.
like the people I talked to, so, like somebody had suggested something and I was like, well, they wouldn't do that. And they were like, well, you can make the character do whatever you want. And I was like, but they wouldn't do that. Like they're like, but you don't even know them. I'm like, but I do know them and they wouldn't do
Yeah,
that.
you have your set framework, and that sort of is the
It's so
same way you
weird.
play Dungeons and Dragons. I'm a big tabletop guy. When you create a
Hmm.
character, you get into that character's mindset, and you sort of role play how that character would be playing. Not
Hmm.
necessarily what you want the decision to be. It's about what
Right.
that character actually wants to do and
It's
what
kind of
their
hard fighting
motivations
that.
are. Yeah, it's hard fighting it, but you have to consciously be like, this character wouldn't do something like that, or this is
Hmm.
how this character would respond to that situation because of
Hmm.
his motivations. So very cool.
Good
Yeah, I like
stuff.
to
I
hear that.
love writing. So good.
Yeah.
When you write, do you have any go-to snacks? If so, what are they? I'm addicted to strawberry pocky sticks. So good.
Nice. That's a good
So
one.
good.
Cookies
Hmm.
and cream is better, but I mean, I'll take
Oh,
strawberry.
banana's the best,
I've
especially
never
banana
had the banana.
chocolate. Oh,
Never had
so
the banana.
good.
Is that
W-
flavor you can get in the States?
hmm, pretty
It is?
easily.
I need to
Yeah,
look
I'd
it
probably
up.
just go to an Asian market. It's not that hard to find.
Yeah.
Very good. What did you find most challenging about writing this book? Oh my goodness, everything. Finishing the first draft, finishing the fifth, trying to focus on creating a fictional world when it felt like the real world was going to pieces around me. Every bit was a challenge.
Yeah, writing seems really hard. That's why I don't do
It's
it.
so hard. I
I
love
could probably
it.
bust out like a Skyrim fanfic or something, but
Oh, you
that's
should
about
do it.
it.
I would read
No,
that.
no, no,
Oh
no,
my
no. I'm not
god, that
doing
would
it.
make me so happy. I
I
have to
don't.
say, the writing that I have read of yours was actually good. Like actually
Oh,
so
the
good.
writing for my D&D characters?
It was
Yeah.
really good.
I really
So you
enjoy
should write
writing
more.
my D&D characters out and getting their backstory
You
fleshed
should
out.
write
I
more.
can make characters. I don't know about full stories.
Yeah. The last question is just, can you tell us what you're writing next? And she said it's too early to say. So that's
The
basically the gist
political
of the
answer.
question. Yeah.
Are you running for
Meaning she probably
president?
can't. Yep.
I'm looking at my options right now.
I love that. Okay. Is there anything else that you kind of wanted to touch on in the story, the way the story plays out?
No, it just flowed beautifully to me. Like
Yeah,
you
I
were
was
saying, it
actually
was easy to follow. The characters were interesting, and I can't recommend this book enough to people. I loved it.
absolutely. I really do recommend this book. Highly recommend. Obviously, I think if you're here in the spoiler part, you should have read it by now. Otherwise, why are you here? Um,
Yeah. Too late now. You're an hour and
uh,
seven in.
I did the last piece I think I wanted to kind of touch on is I really liked the way that the plot moves forward. It's very unique
Mm,
plot.
yep.
And that like usually what happens is you have like the beginning where an issue is proposed and you resolve little issues along the way and then you resolve the big issue at the
Mm-hmm.
end. But
Yeah.
in the nature of this being like almost like a mystery book, you're presented with one problem, which is I'm trying to get home, which
Mm-hmm.
turns into my horse was stolen, which
Yeah.
turns into like there's people living in my house,
Yep.
which turns it's like it verily like it slowly morphs from one problem to the next until
Yep.
you finally hit the somebody's trying to kill the queen kind of thing or kill like the queen's son or whatever.
Yeah. It's like
um it's a weird morph.
the main sort of overarching story doesn't show up until like the beginning of the third act of the book. And I
Yeah,
thought that was really cool. Yeah. I
it's
like
a
that
very
because,
unique structure that you don't really
yep.
see that often.
Hmm.
And it worked really well. Usually that
It
kind of
did.
stuff doesn't work because it's like, why am I even following it? Nothing's happening. Like, I'm not
Yeah.
moving forward in the main plot. But like it just kind of allowed you to exist with these characters
Yeah.
almost.
And I think that was the writer and how good she was at making you connect to Cass. Sort
Mm,
of like when
absolutely.
I'm reading this, I'm feeling like I'm rooting for Cass the entire time to work through his issues and to sort of resolve all of these matters because he's been gone for 3 years. He has a lot to catch up on. And sort of that's the starting point is like, I got 3 years lost. what have I missed? What do I need to
Mhm.
do? And I yeah,
It's a
loved
lot,
reading it
spoiler
that way.
alert.
It's a lot.
Uh, being gone for 3 years, you would miss a lot. I'm sure you can attest to that. That is
All
probably
of
one thing you
the,
can
email
attest to.
notifications.
Um, okay, well, that was the last piece that I had a note on that I wanted to chat about. But yes, absolutely. If you're somehow here, go read the book. Otherwise, thank you for listening. I hope you
Or
enjoyed the
we did
book.
such a good job, you don't even need to read it anymore.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe
Maybe.
maybe you have a book report and you were just watching our podcast so you
Oh
could
my
bang it out real
god.
quick tonight.
Yes, I
Good
hope
luck.
so. If you are here for a book report, leave a comment.
It'd be so funny.
Oh, that'd be so fun.
I wish
Anyways,
these existed when I was in high school. I'd be watching these.
oh my god, I did. They did. All you have to do is
We
look up
just use I
XYZ
just use Spark
synopsis.
Notes. I
Yeah,
just use
exactly.
Spark Notes, but I want a podcast form
Oh,
so
I
I
see
can,
what you're
like,
saying. I see
get
what you're saying.
talking points and, like, flow and everything, you know?
Yeah, so you kind of know what to talk about. I see what
Yep,
you're saying. This is
yep,
sneaky. This is sneaky. Very good. Yeah, so if you have read the book and you want to continue the discussion, please feel free to leave a comment. If you feel so inclined, I would really love if you join the Discord if you're not already there. And please come hang out with us in the Discord. There's a whole Book Bonanza channel. It's a little quiet. Not that that's necessarily a
yeah,
bad thing. I think readers are generally quiet, but come discuss the book with us. Just make sure you do spoiler tag if there's spoilers. And if you're not sure, spoiler tag it anyways. But yeah,
yep,
come hang out. I do want to shout out all of our patrons. We
yes.
have Bucky Blue, Hopple, Alpaca Tom, Aman, Fabulous Breanna, Brianna's mom, Brianna's brother, Brianna's wife. Anna Hudak, Nikolai at Night, Cypher Primus, Brendan Myers, Marcus O'Neill, and Mimi J.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the support. It really helps us out a lot. Come hang out with us again. Before we leave, where can people find you?
Discord, come say hi.
Come hang out. Come hang out in Discord. You can find me in Discord as well. You can find me on TikTok, Twitch,
Everything.
Twitter. Rest in peace.
Maybe? You make a
Maybe
hive yet?
I have not. Should
That's where all the cool
I?
kids are going to, I guess,
But I'm not
nowadays.
a cool kid. I literally have okay, so I created my Twitter forever ago and I like tweeted once for a school assignment and then I didn't
Oh,
use it.
you tweeted for a school assignment.
Yeah, isn't that stupid?
It sounds like an I hate my friends topic. I need to hear a breakdown on that.
Oh, yeah. You also have to remind me to tell you about how I found the counselor reading 50 Shades of Grey. That was also,
Ooh, spicy.
yeah, that was really funny. Anyways.
Yep.
All right, guys. I hope you had a great time with us. Take care. Bye.
Peace.